Now, the Democratic convention saw an unlikely speaker on Monday. Longtime Republican and former Trump rival for the presidency, Governor John Kasich, took to the virtual stage and endorsed Joe Biden.
Joe Biden is a man for our times, times that call for all of us to take off our partisan hats and put our nation first for ourselves and, of course, for our children.
Kasich is one of 4 Republican politicians who appeared at the Democratic convention. And they're not the only conservatives splitting with Trump. Last year, several prominent Republicans created the Lincoln Project, a political action committee dedicated to preventing the re-election of Donald Trump. The group has spent millions of dollars on ad campaigns against the president and other staunch Trump supporters running for re-election. Here's a recent clip from one of their ads.
Protecting our freedoms and the rules of the game is a fundamentally conservative act. President Trump shows no such respect for the Constitution. He and his cronies disrespect freedom of assembly, due process, and states' rights. Joe Biden will conserve the Constitution. He will conserve the rule of law. He will conserve the American dream as we've promised it to our children. Trump is weak. Trump is not conservative, but he's the most easily fixable problem in America today. A vote for Joe Biden in this election is a vote for our Constitution.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Joining me now is one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project and a longtime Republican political strategist, Rick Wilson. It's time to take off our partisan hat, Rick Wilson, and put our country first. How important was it to have Republicans like Governor Kasich speak at the Democratic National Convention and send this kind of message?
I think it was vital for the Democratic Convention to feature the people they're going to need to get. In Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, and other places, they will need to get Republican votes. They will need to get people in the middle. They will need to get people who are not traditional Democratic or progressive voters. So it was vital for the convention to pursue those last night, and I think that was a good step in doing so.
And they've certainly pursued quite a few. There's 4 Republican speakers at the DNC, but is any of this going to lead to any significant wave of Republicans actually switching sides this November? Is there any evidence to show that Republican voters are responding positively to these sort of anti-Trump messages?
Ghida, this is a game of small numbers. Donald Trump won 3 states in the Midwest with fewer than 77,000 votes. He won Florida with fewer than 150,000 votes. So it's a matter of going out and pulling together small numbers of disaffected Republicans in these key swing states to win the Electoral College. These are not about big numbers. These are about targeted numbers. And I think targeting them with the voters that they need to get last night, they were giving Republican voters who are disaffected with Trump an off-ramp to go vote for Joe Biden.
You mentioned disaffected Republicans and conservative voters, and your aim was always to persuade enough of them, enough Republican-leaning independents as well in key swing states. But the reality is this: the president still has high approval ratings among Republicans, as you know. In fact, his support among conservatives has gone up from 76% to 85%. And the percentage of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents who said they might back Biden has been cut in half since June.
Well, those are based mostly on the CNN poll, which is among registered voters, not likely voters. But more importantly, this is because the Republican Party is shrinking. And as it's like a star collapsing, it becomes more dense and pure as it collapses. So a lot of the voters that no longer call themselves like Republicans, who were formerly Republican voters, both by registration and behaviorally, have left that pool. So the remaining pool is going to be more pro-Trump, relatively speaking. And this election, like all elections, has a sorting function towards the end. You see this uptick in partisan identification towards the end of every election cycle. I'm not really surprised by any of those numbers.
But there is ideology, obviously, that drives many of those numbers among conservatives. And in fact, recent polls also show that Trump still has an edge with voters when it comes to the economy, that people think he would do better in handling the economy despite the pandemic than Joe Biden would.
Well, I think 2 things obtain there. The first is we're about to see a much more severe economic crisis than has previously been recognized. There are going to be a wave of evictions in this country soon. There are a wave of foreclosures soon. We've seen in our polling and our research that concern over people maintaining their housing, their jobs, and their health care has shot up in a dramatic fashion. And so that long run on Trump keeping the economic number where it was it's already diminished dramatically. Trump used to lead Biden or any generic Democrat by about 25 points on the economy, and now it's by 2 or 3. So it's declined dramatically. And I think as the economic realities of the mishandling of COVID set in, it's going to be even more pronounced.
For now, though, 48% say Trump will do a better job handling the economy compared to 38% for Biden. And there's a gap that's been closing in other recent polls. So isn't it a fact that actually if things do turn out to be a little bit better between now and November, things could turn around for President Trump and his election prospects could actually increase?
Well, if the economy was the sole driver, and it's not, you could make that argument. But we also have 170,000 dead Americans due to the mishandling of COVID. We have an increasingly obvious set of failures in that crisis that were deliberately engineered in ways because the president's mania for believing it would go away, for what we've seen in Vanity Fair, where the White House basically sat down and said, we're going to cut out the blue states from testing in the beginning of this crisis. All of these things they've done, weigh in not only on the economy itself, but on the deaths and the other damage that COVID has wrought in the nation.
What about the differences that Republicans still have with Democrats? You say your stated mission is to defeat President Trump and Trumpism at the ballot box. You say you still have, obviously, a lot of policy differences with Democrats, but electing them and Democrats among them who support the Constitution over Republicans who do not is a worthy effort, even if it means Democratic control of the Senate and an expanded Democratic majority in the House. But that must be a very hard pill to swallow, isn't it, for many Republicans and conservatives?
Well, look, we understand that there is a choice in this election between a good man and a bad man, between a decent man and an indecent man, between a competent man and an incompetent man. And in those regards, we have to look at what's coming in the next couple of years. And it's not going to be big policy fights. It's going to be the fact that we're going to have to get out of the hole that Donald Trump has put us in economically. We're going to have to get out of the crisis he's put us in with COVID. And so it's our view that putting country over party in this election will also teach the Republican Party that transforming itself into a personality cult devoted to Donald Trump was a bad political investment. We believe there should be a center-right voice in this country, but right now the Republican Party is only a voice for Donald Trump.
But can you really sway many voters who strongly identify as Republican? Many would suggest that you are just preaching to the choir, to Democrats and to the other never-Trumpers out there.
Well, we're not actually trying to convert the hardest MAGA voters. Those folks are dug in, and we're not trying to waste resources on moving their numbers. However, there is an enormous pool of Republican voters who have departed from the party starting in 2016, markedly so in 2018. They are mostly suburban voters. They tend to be more female. They tend to be educated. They tend to be more independent, especially independent men. Those voters have already started to reject Donald Trump. They used to be a part of the Republican coalition, and they no longer are. Those are the people we're talking to quite effectively, we think, and quite diligently. And we've made some real differences in terms of where these swing state campaigns look because we've targeted those voters effectively.
Trump, though, still has dismissed your efforts at targeting him. He's called all of your followers losers, and the Republican National Committee is furious about the millions you've spent on ad campaigns, not just against him, but also against Republican senators who are up for re-election. In fact, this is what the RNC spokesman said. The Lincoln Project is comprised of grifters who are nothing more than agents of the Democrat Party above all else. These political opportunists are solely concerned with making a quick buck for themselves. How do you respond to these accusations?
Well, it's good to know how deeply we are under the skin of Donald Trump and the RNC. They wouldn't attack us if we weren't effective. They wouldn't attack us if we weren't making a difference in the country and in these races. We've been in a number of Senate races where suddenly those races are no longer on the board for Republicans. They're collapsing all over the place. Arizona, Colorado, Maine, where we've been very effectively hammering those folks. Now, the other part of that assertion by the RNC is ironic to me, because you've got a campaign of people around Donald Trump who are making tens of millions of dollars off his campaign. His former campaign manager was buying Ferraris and Land Rovers. And if the Lincoln Project principals wanted to go out and make money, we would have kept quiet.
But that's precisely what they accuse you of. The RNC chair has accused the Lincoln Project of profiting off attacking the president. Some
Well, we've spent
Republicans
about
also
90,
say that you're
we've
not
spent
real
about
Republicans.
90% of we've spent about 90% of the money we've brought in on voter contact, or we've escrowed it for media buys in the fall. None of us is getting rich off this affair. And in fact, there are people around Donald Trump who are buying Ferraris and Land Rovers, not us. Sorry. I wish it was different in some ways, and I'm sure my wife wishes it was different in some ways, but here we are. We're just doing this for the good of the party and the good of the country.
For the good of the party, but many say that you've also enriched yourselves in the process. Can you deny that?
I can deny it.
Some of the Republicans who accuse you of many things say that you and your colleagues are Trump haters and a bunch of elitists. Beyond the attacks on Trump, what does the Lincoln Group actually really stand for? What ideas and policies would you like to see Biden, if he is elected, take into his center-left administration?
Well, look, we believe that Donald Trump is anathema to every traditional conservative value in this country. I would like to see Joe Biden believe in the Constitution, which I believe he does. I would like to see him adhere to the rule of law, which I believe he will. I would like to see him put the needs of the country over his ego and his own demands and his own wealth, which he will. Donald Trump would not. And I think there are plenty of ways that the Lincoln Project has embodied the traditional Republican values that we have always supported: limited government, the rule of law, adherence to the Constitution. Those are things that Donald Trump never has and never will. And Joe Biden, we have at least the possibility that Joe Biden will do so. And we're not in this because we're a policy organization. We don't have a checklist of specific bills we want passed. We want to remove the threat of Donald Trump from American political life.
But does it also mean that you've completely given up on the Republican Party? You recently said it is no longer the GOP, the grand old party, but now it's become the GQP, the grand QAnon party. Has it been taken over by this fringe conspiracy theory cult-like faction within the Republican Party?
It has, and there are now people in the White House who are flirting with QAnon all the time. The campaign is flirting with QAnon. So when your party becomes a repository for cranks and conspiracy theorists and devotes itself almost exclusively to praising the dear leader, you're not a viable political party based on a philosophy or an ideology. You're a personality cult run by lunatics. And that's what the GOP has become.
And if you were to make a prediction, what happens after November 3rd, after the election? How messy will things be? And what do you see the state of American democracy being after November 3rd?
I predict it's going to be very messy. If it's a close election in the Electoral College, Donald Trump is going to try every trick in the book to remain in office and remain in power. He is going to lie, cheat, steal, and manipulate the election as much as he possibly can. This is why we're working very hard to make sure it's not a close election, but is in fact a sweeping repudiation of Trump and Trumpism. And because of that, we believe that it's important to keep the pressure on the Donald Trump campaign, and important to keep the pressure on the Republicans who have enabled him, because they're going to own this problem going forward.
Rick Wilson, great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.